Summary, we're going to start new era here. After Zhang Yi done Tai Eclipse Moon, he rested for few months and enjoyed his peacetime. Finally, Zhu Zheng calories Zhang Yi to go on special mission. This mission is going to be a huge for Zhang Yi BCZ. At the end of this mission, Zhang Yi will gain huge benefits. Let's begin. Chapter 780, 1 Sea Monster, Ad 1. After Zhang Yi looked around, he said to Qin Jingguan, "The coastal defense must be done well. There will basically be no enemies on land in the future, so we must be wary of enemies on the sea." Qin Jingguan scratched his head, but our armed forces were basically exhausted last time. And we don't have enough manpower. Zhang Yi said lightly, "Don't worry about this. I have asked Blizzard City for a batch of weapons." He and Qin Jingguan returned to the shelter and put the large number of weapons directly in the arsenal. More than 20 huge coastal defense cannons, as well as sufficient weapons and ammunition, and many other heavy weapons. With these weapons, enemy ships within 30 kilometers of the coastline can be blocked. Qin Jingguan was very happy to see these weapons and promised on the spot that he would arrange the layout and train his soldiers to operate these weapons. Later, Zhang Yi also got the icebreaker he wanted. Qin Jingguan assigned him a few old sailors, and Zhang Yi took the women and his family away from Tianhai City and played in the offshore area. Zhang Yi was very cautious and would not go near deep water areas. The boat was sailing along the edge of the ice near the coast. Everyone enjoyed the sea view and experienced the fun of sea fishing. Although they didn't go too far, it was still a long trip compared to the past, so everyone's face was filled with smiles. Zhang Yi's face was fully equipped with fishing gear. Everyone wore cold-proof clothes, stood on the deck in the biting cold wind, and tried to use frozen fish blocks as bait and throw them into the sea to fish for big fish. Everyone had a fishing rod, and everyone was very excited at the beginning. But after an hour, no one had caught a fish. Not to mention catching a fish, there was not even a bite. What's going on? Are all the fish near the coast frozen to death? Zhang Yi said puzzledly, touching his chin. Liang Yu looked at his hands in frustration, muttering, "My hands have also lifted 100 Jin sword and smashed bluestone slabs. How come I can't even catch a fish?" The old sailor on the ship was named Tian Shi. People called him Lao Tian. He was a bold man with a big beard in his 40s. Seeing this scene, he laughed and came to explain. "Mr. Zhang, you don't know this, right? The water temperature on the surface is too low, and the fish are swimming down." Zhang Yi leaned on the railing and asked with a smile, "Doesn't that mean that if you want to catch big fish, you can only go to the deep sea area?" Lao Tian said, "Fishing is indeed a bit difficult. We also use trawl nets to fish, but it is not recommended for you to go to the deep sea area." Zhang Yi sneered and said, "Don't worry for me. The most meaningful thing is the scenery at this moment." He turned his head to look at the side. Zhou Kuer and Yang Xinxin held fishing rods in their hands and looked intently at the floating ice on the water. Even the biting cold wind and red faces could not stop their enthusiasm for fishing. This kind of comfortable scene was enough to make Zhang Yi feel satisfied. Old Tian nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. But he also murmured, "Although it is a bit difficult to fish near the coast, it is still a bit strange that no fish has been caught for so long." No one noticed that when their big ship was quietly parked in the sea, a huge shadow slowly floated up from the water. Liang Yu found something wrong at the first time. "Hey, why did the water surface turn black?" She looked down, and then her pupils immediately shrank. "There is something under the water." Liang Yu's voice was very urgent, which immediately attracted the attention of Zhang Yi and Tian Shi. Zhang Yi turned around and found the huge black shadow under the water. Its size was so large that Zhang Yi couldn't help but be surprised. The length of Xiaoyao is 62 meters, and the underwater shadow has not yet completely floated up, and it is almost half the size of the hull. Old Tian yelled in fear, "Oh no, it's a mutated sea beast." The women who were fishing also screamed in fear, and then they all took the same approach, flocking to Zhang Yi for protection. Only Liang Yu was relatively calm. Although she was also shocked, the first thing she thought of was not to shout, but to solve the problem at hand. Old Tian and the crew had already begun to make anxious preparations. When encountering such a giant sea beast, all they could do was stabilize their bodies to avoid being thrown out, and then the rest was to pray. Everyone go back to the cabin immediately and tie yourself up. Quick, must be quick. But Zhang Yi ignored old Tian's words. His right hand was on the railing. First, use the ability of flying to suspend the entire icebreaker. A layer of hazy white light appeared on the hull of the icebreaker. Although it was still on the water, it was pulled by another force and lifted up. Splash! The entire hull was separated from the water and just quietly suspended on the sea. Then, the two worlds are separated. Zhang Yi's right eye flashed with brilliant light, and in an instant, a huge spherical space enveloped the entire ship. The ship stopped shaking and was as stable as if it was parked on land. This is... Lao Tian was shocked. He looked outside and found that the entire ship was already flying in the air. The sea was turbulent, but it did not affect the ship at all. A miracle! This is a miracle. Lao Tian and the crew were dumbfounded, staring at their boss with dull eyes. Although they had heard of Zhang Yi's strength, they also knew that supernatural powers could indeed do things that ordinary people could not understand. But the scene in front of them was too incredible. Zhang Yi jumped onto the railing and overlooked the huge and deep sea below. Suddenly, he saw a huge ice blue eye staring at him from under the sea. Then 3, 5, 10, countless strange eyes appeared on the monster's body. Is this a mutated sea beast? Zhang Yi suddenly had an impulse in his heart. He wanted to catch the sea beast and study it. Moo! A huge roar came from under the sea, and the sound was as long as it came from a distant place, just like the old ox in the village. Zhang Yi pulled out the holy judgment with his right hand, and the black dark matter was wrapped around it like a flame. At this time, the sea beast also suddenly rushed out from under the water, raising a huge wave. If Zhang Yi had not protected the ship in time, this collision might have created a deep pit on the side of the icebreaker. Void slash. Zhang Yi aimed at the bottom and slashed with a knife. Dark matter gushed out from the blade, like a heavy stroke of ink at the intersection of the sky and the sea. Now Zhang Yi has become more and more proficient in the power of the void. He can concentrate the majestic power at one point and launch a targeted attack. The sea monster rushed towards the hull, but it didn't know that it would never be able to touch the big ship in front of it. However, its body was split directly from the middle like butter hitting a hot knife. Blood spurted out like rain, dyeing the entire sea red. Boom! Its huge body split into two halves and smashed into the sea, and another bloody wave surged. Chapter 782. Peaceful Time. Add 2. The huge corpse of the sea beast floated on the sea, and the blood dyed a large area of the sea red. Soon, a shark smelled the blood and swam over from a distance, with its black dorsal fins swimming on the water. Zhang Yi then controlled the boat to fall. Splash. Water splashed. Everywhere. The crew members were shocked by Zhang Yi's ability and called it a miracle. Yang Xinxin hugged Zhang Yi's arm and shouted admiringly, "Brother, you are great." Although the others were shocked, they were not overly panicked because they all believed in Zhang Yi's strength. Everyone came to the front of the boat and saw what the sea monster was. It turned out to be a mutant whale. However, its head was full of dense eyes, and there were many bumps on its body. Its body was much larger than the largest blue whale. It was no longer possible to recognize what species it was at the beginning. A feast had begun below, and carnivorous fish were frantically snatching its corpse, and blood waves were rolling. Although it looks a bit big, it's not that scary, Yang Xia said with a smile, covering her full chest. No, this thing is very powerful. Zhang Yi denied her statement. If it hadn't met me, this thing could overturn a steel ship weighing thousands of tons. Its power underwater is very terrifying. If calculated according to the standards of aliens, its destructive power can reach the delta level. Liang Yu's eyes lit up and suddenly picked up the boom on the ground and threw it towards the water. Now, I don't believe I can't catch fish. Everyone also suddenly realized. After this sea monster was killed, it would definitely attract fish. So everyone followed suit and hurried over to fish. Zhang Yi noticed that Lao Tian was leaning against the railing, frowning and thinking about something. He walked over, put his hands in his pockets and asked, "What's wrong? Is there any problem?" Old Tian saw Zhang Yi asking and hurriedly replied, "Mr. Zhang, I just feel a little strange." "What's strange? Tell me in detail." Old Tian pointed to the sea monster corpse below and said in a deep voice, "According to common sense, sea monsters of this size are active in deep sea areas and generally do not come to the near shore. Because in such places, it is difficult for it to get enough food. So, I think it's very strange to meet it here." Zhang Yi didn't know much about the sea and asked curiously, "Then tell me, what might be the reason?" Old Tian said slowly, "Sometimes, if there is bad weather, or an eruption of an underwater volcano, or an earthquake on the seabed, deep-sea fish will run to the nearshore for refuge. Or they have encountered natural enemies." A cautious light flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. Natural enemies? Does a sea monster of such a huge size have natural enemies? His eyes couldn't help but look towards the direction of the deep sea. The sea is so vast and deep. Even before the end of the world, there were many unknown and terrible creatures in it. Not to mention the arrival of the era of great mutation. It's better to have less contact, Zhang Yi said with emotion. He originally planned to collect the huge sea monster and make it into food to eat something fresh. But seeing its weird appearance, he couldn't help feeling a little disgusted. So he simply let it return to the sea and helped them make nests to facilitate fishing. Sure enough, with this huge bait, fishing was much easier later. The fish harvest was a big harvest. However, Zhang Yi told them that these fish could not be eaten and they should either release them or keep them for fun. In the following days, Zhang Yi and his friends lived a very leisurely life. Although the organization of the Tengu team was retained, Zhang Yi listened to orders but not to announcements. In order to win him over, Zhu Zheng did not dare to assign him tasks easily. After Uncle Yu and Fatty Su went to the Deng group, they both had obvious changes when they came back. Uncle Yu's strength has been greatly enhanced. They also received professional combat training, and their combat literacy has been greatly improved. The person who changed most obviously was Fatty Su. He lost a lot of weight, and it would not be an exaggeration to describe him as emaciated. It is said that he received professional military training there, which made him live a life worse than death. But the real reason, Zhang Yi knew it in his heart. Later, Fatty Su couldn't forget Blizzard City and always looked for Zhang Yi, asking to go back and take a look. Zhang Yi was also good to his brother. After mentioning it to Deng Shintong, he directly helped Fatty Su get a small house in Blizzard City. He even got him a long-term bus card so that he could go to Blizzard City frequently to relieve stress. In short, although the price they paid was heavy, the gains were also very significant. However, it turned out that it is very easy for a person who has temporarily lost weight through exercise to rebound. After returning to the shelter, Fatty Su burst into tears and began to eat in revenge. In less than half a month, he regained his figure and even became fatter. And what about Zhang Yi? On weekdays, he enjoyed a comfortable life, playing cards with Zhou Ke, Yang Xia and Yang Xinxin, playing baseball and boxing. However, he would also take 2 hours every day to learn martial arts with Liang Yu. In terms of close combat, he did have some flaws. The improvement of his strength made him realize that all high-level aliens had comprehensively improved their strength. The wooden barrel effect determined that the lower limit of strength was the shortcoming of the alien. If there was a fatal flaw in any aspect, it was very likely to be killed in a battle. Fortunately, Zhang Yi's many years of experience working in the warehouse, coupled with his diligent exercise, gave him a good physical fitness. Over time, he was able to keep up with Liang Yu's training level. However, martial arts is a long-term and hard work, and it is impossible to achieve it overnight. Zhang Yi was sometimes impatient and asked Liang Yu, "Is there any quick way?" Liang Yu rolled her eyes. "Yes, its name is Sunflower Manual." Zhang Yi smiled. "I prefer the Taoist method of yin and yang harmony." In return, Liang Yu's iron fist naturally came. Zhang Yi quickly explained, Actually, I'm just making a suggestion. It doesn't matter if it works or not. We just want to experience the process. In such an environment, Zhang Yi's close combat ability is also improving. Liang Yu specially developed a training program for Zhang Yi. If you want to achieve quick success, there is also a way, which is to use defense as offense. The Holy Judge is a horizontal sword, which is very convenient for parrying and blocking. Just help him block the close attack, and then use the ability of Space Shuttle to open the distance. Whether Zhang Yi uses Thunder and White Owl shooting, or uses the Void Slash, he can play the advantages of his own ability. In this way, 2 months passed unknowingly, and it came to July. The hottest season of the year. The planet also came to the perihelion, and the temperature in Tianhai City was as high as -30 degrees. At this time, our eyes moved slightly away from Tianhai City and came to the South China Sea thousands of miles away. There is an island called Yanlu Island here. The island was formed by the eruption of an underwater volcano and has rich geothermal energy. In the past, it was a famous tourist destination. After the end of the world, people from many surrounding countries fled here. Chapter 783. Red Skylark. At this time, on Yanlu Island, flames shot up to the sky, and heart-wrenching cries and shouts of killing were heard. A group of people rushed into the cave with guns and knives and axes and launched a ruthless killing and looting of another group of Doomsday survivors hiding there. Kill all the men and turn them into bacon when you go back. Leave the women behind, and whoever kills the most people will have priority today. A short, brown-skinned man shouted coldly with an accent from a small Southeast Asian country. Behind him followed a group of unkempt refugees, each with fire in their eyes, howling as they rushed forward. Soon blood was splattered everywhere in the cave. A werewolf-turned alien protected several women and a group of children, fighting and retreating deep into the cave. Zhongyu, can we survive? Behind the werewolf, a pale-faced woman asked haggardly, speaking authentic Chinese. The werewolf responded in the same language, we will survive. You, me, and everyone else can survive. The woman's eyes were a little dim, but the food on the island is almost gone, and people from other organizations have begun to kill each other. How long can we hold on? The werewolf roared and smashed the head of a pursuer with a big stone. He bit his sharp teeth, clenched his fists, and said, there will be a way, there must be a ways. He held a stone in his fist, emitting a faint yellow light in the dark cave. The werewolf lowered his head and looked at the stone. Maybe this is our hope of survival. Zhang Yi rested at home for more than 2 months. The quiet and peaceful days made people greedy. Time flies, and good times always pass especially quickly. They indulged in fun every day, enjoyed delicious food, and lived a very comfortable life. But one day, this kind of life was broken again. Zhu Zheng called Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was not surprised when he received the call, because Zhu Zheng would occasionally call him, ask about his well-being, and try to win over Zhang Yi. Hey Zhu Shui, how are you these days? Zhang Yi asked with a smile. I'm still the same. Zhang Yi, you've had a good rest these 2 months. You sound energetic. Zhang Yi quickly covered his chest and frowned, saying, don't mention it. I've been helping you to destroy Eclipse Moon and block the Samsara Squad, and I still have hidden injuries. Hey, I have to continue to rest. Cough, cough, cough. Zhu Zheng raised his eyebrows. Oh, then I'll call a few doctors to help you check. The medical methods in the district are still better than yours. Forget about that. How can I have the nerve to occupy the medical resources of the district? Zhang Yi laughed. Zhu Zheng also knew that Zhang Yi was doing it on purpose, so he didn't expose it. He smiled and said, Okay, you've rested for so long, it's almost time. I've arranged for Bailey Chongqing and the others to go out on missions. Blizzard City doesn't keep idle people. If Zhang Yi had stayed in Blizzard City, he would have had to work hard. After Bailey Chongqing's treatment by the medical department, his injuries have healed. However, Zhou Ke told Zhang Yi that the chemical drugs in Blizzard City have great side effects on the body. Bailey Chongqing looks healed, but his body must have been left with hidden injuries, which may even shorten his life. There is a very important mission in the region, and you need to come over. I will talk to you in person when the time comes. Zhu Zheng's tone became serious. Zhang Yi frowned. Something else to do? And it's not convenient to talk about it over the phone. It's obviously not an ordinary mission, otherwise Zhu Zheng would not have asked him to carry it out. After a few seconds of silence, he decided to go to Blizzard City first to see the situation. Okay, I'll go there today. After Zhang Yi said to Zhu Zheng, he went back to the house to change clothes. Whenever he went out, he was used to wearing equipment. At least he had to wear a close-fitting black battlesuit. Before leaving, he just said to Fatty Sue, I'm going to Blizzard City. If they ask you later, just tell them. When Fatty Sue heard that Zhang Yi was leaving, he jumped up from the sofa. Will there be another troublesome thing for us to do? Zhang Yi rolled his eyes. Who knows? Anyway, let's see first. Fatty Sue licked his lips. How about I go with you? Zhang Yi rolled his eyes. Let's have fun. I'm not going on vacation. Fatty Sue has tasted the taste and has fallen in love with the service of Blizzard City. After all, the professional service staff are very skilled. The key is that he doesn't need to invest his emotions, so there is no risk of being deceived. After rejecting Fatty Sue, Zhang Yi left the shelter and planned to go to Blizzard City alone. Anyway, it's not the first time, and he is very familiar with the route. It only takes more than an hour to get there by taking the special train, which is not a big deal. Soon, Zhang Yi arrived at Blizzard City. He walked out of the special train and saw a scene that made him unable to help but stare at it. A slight light flashed. In front of him was a woman, a beautiful woman with delicate makeup. She was wearing a green coat with a double-breasted design, and the black buttons were the same color as her long hair. Her face was small and white as ice and snow, and she looked at Zhang Yi with a bit of scrutiny in her big eyes. Zhang Yi had seen many kinds of people, and from the woman in front of him, he immediately judged that her identity was not ordinary. She had a kind of nobility in her bones. Although Zhang Yi was reluctant to use this word to praise others, the woman in front of him did look very much like some young ladies he had seen before. There was an arrogance on her face that had not experienced the frost of the wind and frost, and even simplicity. Zhang Yi could guess that she must not have experienced the despair and struggle of ordinary people after the end of the world. Are you Zhang Yi? The captain codenamed Chaos. The woman looked at Zhang Yi and suddenly asked. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows, smiled and nodded, and replied, I am Chaos. Who are you? A polite smile appeared on the woman's face. I'm Zhu Yonk, a clerk in the commander's office. The commander asked me to pick you up, she said, gracefully stretching out her right hand from her pocket. The tender, white and soft little hand showed that she had never suffered any hardship. But Zhang Yi thought in his heart, Zhu Yonk, surnamed Zhu? It seems that he is related. Zhang Yi had never heard that Zhu Zheng had a daughter, but he vaguely remembered that Bailey Chongqing said that he had a 16-year-old son. So the woman in front of him might be his niece. Zhang Yi didn't think much about it and stretched out his hand to shake her. But Zhu Yonk frowned when she saw the leather gloves on Zhang Yi's hands. She opened her cherry mouth, with a hint of displeasure in her tone, but her expression and behavior were elegant and polite. Mr. Zhang, isn't it? A bit rude for you to do this. Zhang Yi looked at her in surprise. Aw. She pointed to the gloves on Zhang Yi's hand. I mean, when shaking hands with others, you should at least take off the gloves, right? Don't you think so? She asked back with a smile. Although her face was full of smiles, Zhang Yi's impression of this woman suddenly became much worse. She behaved very properly, smiled brightly, and even her requests seemed fine at first glance. But Zhang Yi didn't like people who were always calculating. He always hated trouble. Chapter 780, 4 New Mission. Zhu Yonk's simple action made Zhang Yi realize a fact. He and the woman in front of him were not in the same social class. At least it was like this before the end of the world. But now, those who still insist on the old ways are either too powerful or too simple. Zhang Yi ignored Zhu Yonk's words, just glanced at the Rolex on his wrist. It's almost noon, let's go. I still have lunch after meeting Zhu Shuai. After that, Zhang Yi walked directly past Zhu Yonk and went outside. Zhu Yonk was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect Zhang Yi to be so disrespectful to her. She had given him advice in a nice voice, but he ignored her? Wait a minute. The commander asked me to take you there? Zhu Yonk said, a little unhappy. Zhang Yi said without turning his head, it's not like I don't know the way. Zhu Yonk clenched his fists in his pockets, bit his silver teeth, and stared at Zhang Yi's back. If looks could kill, the clothes on Zhang Yi's back would probably be cut into strips by her sharp eyes. But thinking of Zhu Zheng's reminder, she calmed down and quickly followed. That won't do. I'm here on a mission. If I don't take you with me, my boss will deduct my salaries. Zhang Yi just glanced at her and didn't say anything. He had seen such young ladies from wealthy families. When he was working in the group, he also met some relatives. Although they can't be said to be arrogant, they are all arrogant in their bones. No matter how well they cover up on the surface, they will still inadvertently reveal their inner pride. Zhu Yonk disliked that he didn't take off his gloves when shaking hands. No matter how decent she behaved, she revealed an unspoken intention. She thought her status was higher than Zhang Yi. And no normal person would be so fussy about such a small matter as whether to shake hands with gloves or not in the extremely cold apocalypse. Zhu Yonk also saw Zhang Yi's displeasure and smiled and said beside him, "Why, are you unhappy just because of such a small thing?" Her eyebrows rose as if they could dance. I heard from the commander that you are a very powerful person. You can't be so narrow-minded, right? Zhang Yi said in a tone that he didn't want to pay attention to her. I'm carsick and don't want to talk. The two came outside, and Zhu Yonk's car was parked there. Zhu Yonk didn't believe Zhang Yi's words, and she knew that Zhang Yi was perfunctory to her, so she couldn't help feeling a little unhappy. She had already started to complain about Zhang Yi in her heart. It was obviously he who didn't know social etiquette, and she kindly reminded him, but he got angry instead. However, considering her own identity, combined with the information she learned about Zhang Yi, she suddenly felt relieved. She thought to herself, after all, he is just a warehouse manager, let alone the upper class, not even a middle class. I can't have too high expectations of him. Thinking of Zhu Zheng's reminder to her, Zhu Yonk bit her lip and took the initiative to open the car door. Just think of it as my fault, okay? I should understand you and shouldn't judge others by myself. Get in the car. Zhang Yi glanced at the door she opened, then walked over silently, opened the door of the back seat, and sat in. I'm tired. I'll take a nap first. Please call me when we get there. Zhang Yi closed his eyes. The smile on Zhu Yonk's face froze. If people knew that the eldest daughter of the Zhu family was refused when she opened the car door for someone, it would spread throughout the upper circles of the Jiangnan region within a day. Okay, if you like to sleep, then sleep. She slammed the car door hard in a fit of anger and then drove over. Along the way, as if to retaliate against Zhang Yi, she deliberately drove shakily and had to brake suddenly from time to time. This childish revenge method made Zhang Yi laugh and cry, and he was too lazy to bother with her. Half an hour later, they arrived at the new command center. Hey, we're here. Zhu Yonk saw Zhang Yi, who was still pretending to sleep, through the rearview mirror and shouted unhappily. Zhang Yi opened his eyes. Oh, we're here. After saying that, he quickly opened the car door and walked directly inside. This didn't make Zhu Yonk angry. She went to pick him up specially, but he treated her as if she didn't exist. What a disgusting guy, she said angrily. Zhang Yi came to the command center. When the guard saw Zhang Yi, he immediately saluted respectfully, his eyes full of admiration. Zhang Yi nodded and walked into the building. Zhu Yonk asked someone to park her car and hurried to catch up with Zhang Yi and entered the elevator together. Neither of them spoke in the elevator. Zhang Yi was simply too lazy to talk to this woman. No matter how beautiful a woman is, if she is too troublesome, men like Zhang Yi will still stay away from her. Zhu Yonk stood in the other direction of Zhang Yi in a huff, with an unhappy look on her face.
Ding!
The elevator stopped on the 6th floor. Zhang Yi walked out and entered the huge office of Zhu Zheng. At this time, Zhu Zheng was looking at the computer's information. Seeing Zhang Yi and Zhu Yonk coming over, his face was suddenly full of smiles. Zhang Yi is here. Come on, come and sit down. He took off his glasses, stood up, and told Lan Xinqing to quickly make the Blue Mountain coffee that Zhang Yi often drinks, and then enthusiastically pulled Zhang Yi to sit on the sofa. The caring look was even happier than seeing his own son, who had been separated for many years. It was also the first time that Zhu Yang saw Zhu Zheng so enthusiastic towards people, and she couldn't help but mutter in her heart, "What? If you don't know, you would think he is your illegitimate son." She hesitated and sat down on the sofa next to her. "Zhu Shuai, you called me over. What's the matter? Just tell me clearly so that I don't have to worry about it." Zhu Zheng sighed and slapped his thigh. "Oh, I really encountered a very difficult problem." Zhang Yi heard this and stood up and planned to leave. "I just remembered that the clothes at home have not been collected yet. I'll go back." "Wait a minute. Don't be anxious. Sit down, listen to me finish." Zhu Zheng quickly grabbed Zhang Yi, who wanted to run. Zhang Yi looked at Zhu Zheng with a strange expression. "Zhu Shuai, I am a meritorious official of Blizzard City. You can't just take advantage of me." Zhu Zheng rubbed his hands. "It's not targeting you, but this matter, it's safest for you to do it now." Zhang Yi took a sip of coffee and motioned Zhu Zheng to finish his words. Zhu Zheng told the story of this mission. There is an island called Yanlu Island in the ocean more than 3,700 kilometers away from Tianhai City. A group of overseas Chinese from Huashu country are trapped on it. They're far away from the border and have lived hard for more than half a year. Now, they're facing the dilemma of insufficient food and the evildoers around them starting to commit murders. They sent a distress signal to the Jiangnan district. "We can't ignore it. We must take them back." Zhu Jingyi said righteously, "By the way, aren't you short of people in Tianhai City? When the time comes, let them settle down in Tianhai City and supplement your population." Chapter 785, The Source of God. Zhang Yi immediately raised his own question when he heard this. "More than 3,700 kilometers? You still sent people to rescue them at such a distance?" His face was full of amusement. "Why do I sound so unbelievable? After the Ice Age, the global population dropped sharply. More than 90% of the people died in Huashu alone. I'm afraid that the population of Huashu is now only about 100 million. Now Zhu Zheng is worried about the overseas Chinese more than 3,000 kilometers away, which naturally makes Zhang Yi suspicious." Zhu Zheng lowered his voice and said to him, "There is a big secret here." Zhang Yi immediately listened carefully, and Zhu Yang, who was not far away, also pricked up her ears, for fear of missing a word. But Zhu Zheng glanced at her. "Yuan Ke, you go out first. I'll call you later, come back." Zhu Yang looked disappointed, but still left the office honestly. After she left, Zhu Zhengkai said to Zhang Yi, "The person who contacted us revealed that they may have discovered something extraordinary. That thing is of great significance to us. No, to all the major forces in the world. If we can obtain it, the strength of the entire Jiangnan region will be raised to a higher level. It will be a great thing for the entire Huashu country." Zhang Yi was a little surprised and looked at Zhang Yi in disbelief. "Is it so exaggerated? What on earth is that?" Zhu Zheng stared at him and said, "It may be Source of God." "What is that?" Zhang Yi asked. Zhu Zheng told Zhang Yi the story about the Source of God. It was because Shengjing got a portion of the Source of God in the Qinling Mountains that they had the first Epsilon-level alien in Huashu country. That is a very magical thing. No one knows when and how it appeared. The Shengjing region has a very strict blockade of its existence, and even we have only obtained partial information. It is said that it can make people's genes evolve and reach a new level. Zhu Zheng leaned against the sofa, his eyes filled with some memories. "I've seen that kind of photo, and it's very similar to the one sent by the expatriates on Yanlu Island. And it does sound very similar." Zhang Yi lowered his eyebrows and thought, and felt that it sounded like a myth. Seeing that Zhang Yi didn't speak for a long time, Zhu Zheng asked, "You don't believe it?" Zhang Yi glanced at him and answered very frankly, "It sounds like a myth." Zhu Zheng laughed. "There are too many things in this world that we don't understand. Do you know that most of the great scientists in history believed in theology in their later years? This shows that our human cognition is insignificant compared to the vast universe." He restrained his smile and said seriously, "Perhaps there is really a creator in this world." As if he was worried about making the mistake of idealism, he hurriedly explained, "Of course, I'm not referring to the human-shaped gods in feudal superstition. Well, this is also part of science." Zhang Yi crossed his arms and was skeptical about what Zhu Zheng said. However, if there really is a substance that can make aliens evolve, he is also very interested. "The source of God sounds great," Zhang Yi said lightly. Zhu Zheng's smile became more intense. "This is a rare opportunity. We must not miss it. First of all, we need to confirm whether the things in the hands of those expatriates are true. If the information is confirmed to be correct and the source of God is really found, Zhang Yi, you are definitely the one we focus on training." Although he knew that Zhu Zheng was just making big promises, Zhang Yi had to admit that he was a little tempted. Moreover, if it was just to evacuate the expatriates, it would not be considered a very dangerous job. "Do you need me to go for this level of work?" Zhang Yi asked. He is now at least a captain, no, strictly speaking, a super captain. According to Bailey Chongqing, Zhang Yi, who now has an ability index of 9,600 points, is the strongest in the entire Jiangnan region. Of course, this refers to the theoretical level, and there are still too many uncertain factors in actual combat. Zhu Zheng folded his hands and said seriously, "After all, it is an ocean voyage. No one can predict what dangers we will encounter in the deep sea. If we send warships and too many experts, it will definitely attract the attention of other countries and regions. It will be difficult to deal with the news of the source of God if it is exposed at that time. You know, our Navy's radiation capacity is mainly near the coastline of Huashu country," Zhang Yi said meaningfully, "and if we really want to use the power of the Navy, we must communicate with the East China Sea region. As for the interests, we must also share some of them." Zhu Zheng smiled. "You are not confused?" Zhang Yi bit his finger and began to weigh the risks and rewards of this mission in his mind. If the mission content is just to evacuate overseas Chinese, it means that we will not directly face powerful hostile forces. The risk index is mostly derived from the mutant creatures that may appear in the deep sea. Although this is a bit dangerous, it is not unsolvable. There are many experienced sailors in Chaoyu port. Taking them with us can avoid most of the risks. The reward is the chance to directly obtain the so-called source of God, which will allow him to further improve his strength. Now, if Zhang Yi wants to improve, it is already difficult to simply devour the source of the alien. However, he is not far from the realm of Epsilon, and he can feel it clearly. Either, if he improves step by step, maybe in 3 or 5 years, he can reach the strength of Epsilon. Or, he accepts Zhu Zheng's task and takes a chance. He looked at Zhu Zheng again. "Is it really as simple as evacuating the overseas Chinese?" "Don't think this task is simple," Zhu Zheng said seriously. "The 3,700-kilometer voyage, coupled with such bad weather, leads to increased energy consumption, and no supplies can be obtained on the way back and forth. Just this one. Other people are courting death. Only you who have the space ability and can store a large amount of supplies can do it." Zhang Yi understood in his heart. This may be the biggest reason why Zhu Zheng asked him to go to Nanyang. After Zhu Zheng's persuasion and Zhang Yi's own weighing of the pros and cons, he decided to take this mission. After all, if he doesn't do it, there are people who will do it. If someone seizes the opportunity to be promoted to Epsilon, it will not be good news for him. Shift. "I didn't expect that it was the end of the world, but I still had to roll." Zhu Zheng told him several conditions for the execution of this mission. First, the region will not send too many powerful aliens. Zhang Yi is an alien from the outer city, and his identity is easier to hide, which is a favorable condition. Second, warships cannot be sent there, otherwise it will easily attract attention. Combining the above 2 points, Zhang Yi directly told Zhu Zheng that they did not need to provide manpower and ships, and Tianhai City could prepare them by itself. However, the region must provide enough fuel and weapons and equipment. Chapter 786. Burden. Zhu Zheng agreed to Zhang Yi's request. "We will provide you with all the resources you need. In addition, I will give you a very good assistant to assist you in carrying out this mission." He showed a meaningful smile on his face, like a shrewd fox. Zhang Yi had a bad feeling in his heart. But he couldn't refuse, because it was impossible for Blizzard City not to send someone to follow him on this mission. Zhu Zheng needed to control the situation within his control. But suddenly, Zhang Yi realized something in his heart, and he asked, "Isn't it the lady just now?" He pronounced the word, "miss," a little heavily. Zhu Zheng coughed. "Ahem, generally speaking, it's better to call her a lady. Miss or something like that is a bit ambiguous." Zhang Yi opened his eyes wide. "Is it really hers? This is a bit of a headache." Zhang Yi doesn't like her personality very much. If he has to take her with him on a long sea voyage, he is really reluctant. Zhu Zheng smiled and said, "She is my niece. You have met her. What do you think of her?" Zhang Yi. "You said that she is your niece. What else can I say? What else do you want me to say?" Ms. Zhu Yunk looks well-educated, smart, and capable. Zhu Zheng smiled with satisfaction. "Haha, it seems that you two had a good chat. I'm relieved." Zhu Yunk is indeed Zhu Zheng's niece, so it is difficult for Zhang Yi to refuse the arrangement of this operation. He asked Zhu Zheng for the permission to collect supplies and then temporarily left Zhu Zheng's office. Outside, he saw Zhu Yunk leaning against the wall with a deep face. She didn't know what she was thinking about, but she frowned and didn't seem very happy. She noticed Zhang Yi coming out and raised her eyebrows to look over. Zhang Yi curled his lips, nodded slightly to her as a greeting, and then left the command center. Zhu Yunk looked at Zhang Yi's back with a stubborn and resentful look in his eyes and turned around and walked into the office. "Uncle, why do you want me to get close to this man? I don't like him. He doesn't look gentlemanly at all. In comparison, I still like Deng Shintong a little more." She sat on the sofa with her legs crossed, her arms folded across her chest, looking indignant. Zhu Zheng lowered his head to drink coffee and said lightly, "At present, Zhang Yi is more valuable to me than Deng Shintong. This time I specially arranged for you to go to the sea with him. There will be a few months in between for you two to be alone. You must try to take him down during this time. Then I will let you two get married naturally." Zhu Zheng smiled. By then, Zhang Yi will become his nephew-in-law. With this relationship, he will completely become his own person. Zhu Yunk's expression was a little uncomfortable. "Are you saying that you want me to seduce him?" As the princess of the Zhu family, relying on her uncle's status, Zhu Yunk has lived a pampered life since childhood. She has always been pursued by people. When has she ever been someone else's licking dog? She is not a girl who graduated from a technical secondary school. She will not go to a man just because he sings a few good raps. It's easy for a girl to chase a boy. As long as you want to do it, I believe you can succeed. Zhu Zheng looked at her deeply. It's been so long. If it were someone else, they might have gotten pregnant. You are not Linghu Feishua from the Rose team. If you don't want to suffer in life, you must pay a price in exchange for a superior life. Zhu Yunk frowned slightly, feeling a little unhappy. She didn't want to be a victim of marriage, but being born in such a family, there are some things she can't do. Freedom is not something that is so easy to get, especially when you have enjoyed a rich material life for decades. Zhu Zheng said lightly, "This time I go out, by the way, I also want you to experience it. You have not experienced the cruelty of the end of the world, which is not conducive to your future work and development. It's good for you to go out and see the outside world." Zhu Yunk is Zhu Zheng's beloved niece. Smart and beautiful, she got a bachelor's degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology at a young age with the resources of her family. In the future, she will become a useful talent under Zhu Zheng. However, she still needs to be exposed to the cruelty of the end of the world in order for her to grow up quickly. This mission is not very risky, and Zhu Zheng has arranged Zhang Yi to be by her side, which is just killing two birds with one stone. It can not only cultivate her relationship with Zhang Yi, but also allow Zhang Yi to protect her closely. Zhu Yunk gathered her hair and said disapprovingly, "Uncle, I know the cruelty of the end of the world." "No, you don't." Zhu Zheng retorted mercilessly. "You live too comfortably, and you still have many simple thoughts in your heart. Everyone around you is very friendly to you, and you have never experienced the difficult end of the world life like ordinary people. You're just talking, and your body can't feel it at all. You must go on this mission. If you fail this time, you'll be a clerk in Blizzard City in the future, responsible for printing documents and answering calls. The old Zhu family doesn't support idlers. Zhu Yong felt a little sad. She didn't expect that her uncle, who always loved her, would use her as a tool to consolidate power. For a moment, she even had the urge to cry. But she forgot that if she wasn't Zhu Zheng's niece, she would have a hard time surviving after the end of the world. I understand. Isn't it just marrying him? I'll do it. Zhu Yong sniffed and stood up as if she had made a great sacrifice. Don't worry, I will complete this smoothly. Zhang Yi received the necessary resources at the military supply department. Among them were a large number of shipborne weapons and equipment and fuel. Although Tianhai City was not short of fuel, Zhang Yi had always been willing to take it if he didn't want to. All of this was what he deserved, so how could he be polite to old Zhu? Zhu Yong found Zhang Yi. Although she still had some grudges against Zhang Yi in her heart, she tried to put on a smile when she thought of Zhu Zheng's order. Zhang Yi said coldly, please call me by my code name when you are working. Zhu Yong's expression froze. Is it necessary to be so serious? Some things are most afraid of getting used to. Zhang Yi glanced at her. This time we are going on a long journey at sea, and the most important thing along the way is to hide our identities. So, you must never let anyone know that I am Zhang Yi. By the way, you can't even call me by my code name on the road. When the time comes, you will call me Mr. Zhang, and I will call you Miss Zhu. Zhang Yi thought of Zhu Zheng's interpretation of the word miss, and couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. Zhu Yong gathered her long hair, revealing her white neck. Okay, then I'll listen to you. Zhang Yi was confirming the list of supplies with the quartermaster. She came to Zhang Yi and said beside him, if there is anything else that needs attention, find a time to tell me one by one. Okay. After Zhang Yi confirmed the supplies, he said to her lightly, I'll send you an email later. Zhang Yi's cold attitude made Zhu Yong very angry. Hey, they just said that you were impolite when shaking hands. Why are you so cold to them? After all, we are partners in the mission. There is no need to be like this, right? Do you want to be so cold to me in the next few months? Zhang Yi glanced at her with some amusement. You also know that we are just partners in the mission, so everyone should do their own job. There is no need to make it seem like we have a very good relationship, right? There is no need to force integration if you are in different circles. With Zhang Yi's current status, even Zhu Zheng has to be polite to him. Naturally, he does not need to please the eldest lady of the Zhu family. Zhu Yong thought of her attitude when she first met Zhang Yi, and a trace of regret emerged in her heart. If she had known earlier, her attitude towards Zhang Yi would have been better. Zhang Yi said to Zhu Yong, we set out from the seaport of Tianhai City. I don't plan to take people from Blizzard City on the road. I will use the crew of Tianhai City. Zhu Yong nodded. Then I'll go with you. Chapter 787, The Most Terrifying Contrast. Zhu Yong is Zhu Zheng's eyes and ears. Zhang Yi thought so in his heart. So, he did not refuse to take Zhu Yong with him, but he would not try to please her deliberately because of this. Anyway, their mission was just to evacuate the overseas Chinese, and there was no need for too much communication. Zhang Yi took Zhu Yong away from Blizzard City and took the special train back to Tianhai City. Zhu Yong was carrying a large suitcase filled with her daily necessities. Zhang Yi had no intention of helping her put the luggage into the alien space. He closed his eyes as soon as he got on the train and sat quietly on the special train to rest. Sigma men never fall into women's traps. After arriving in Tianhai City, Zhang Yi took out the snowmobile from the alien space and said to Zhu Yong, let's go back to my place first. Zhu Yong's heart moved. Back to your place? She looked Zhang Yi up and down and asked suspiciously, what do you want to do by taking a girl like me home? Zhang Yi was speechless. Are you going or not? I'll go. Zhu Yong was a little uneasy, and she was secretly wondering if Zhang Yi had seen through Zhu Zheng's thoughts, so he was going to take the opportunity to do something to her. Although her purpose was the same, she felt that the progress should not be so fast. At least there should be some prelude. For example, Zhang Yi was attracted to her first, and then fell in love with her, and then the two of them would do something naturally. But now it was obvious that Zhang Yi was the leader. With such an uneasy mood, she got into Zhang Yi's car. "Get off, you sit in the back." Zhang Yi saw her sitting in the passenger seat and drove her away without any hesitation. Zhu Yonk gritted his teeth in anger. "Do you want to do this?" "My passenger seat is reserved for my woman," Zhang Yi said without questioning. He could feel Zhu Yonk's arrogance, so before setting off to perform the mission, he had to kill her spirit. Otherwise, there would definitely be a lot of trouble at that time. Zhu Yonk keenly perceived the key point of the matter. "Do you have a girlfriend?" "Of course," Zhang Yi said calmly. "A man as handsome and capable as me. Do you think he could be single?" Zhu Yonk's eyes widened. Her uncle actually asked her to chase a man with a girlfriend? Thinking of her uncle's extremely realistic style of doing things, Zhu Yonk reluctantly accepted the reality. She thought to herself, "It doesn't matter. Even if he has a girlfriend, I can still snatch him away." Zhu Yonk claims to be sexy, beautiful, knowledgeable, and a top socialite with a superior family background. She still has this confidence. But she still went to sit in the back obediently. On the way, looking at the snow-covered ground outside, she gradually began to calm down. Reflect on whether there was a problem with her previous actions. Being with Zhang Yi was just a task assigned by her uncle. In Zhu Yonk's eyes, Zhang Yi was a man with great shortcomings, but he seemed to be reliable in terms of comprehensive conditions. As long as she married him, she would be able to enjoy a superior life in the future, and she could also be the wife of the investigation captain that everyone envied. She was a sophisticated egoist, and in order to achieve her goals, even sacrificing her appearance was not unacceptable. She thought about it. Although Zhang Yi now has all the problems of a commoner, and there is a big gap between him and her who came from the upper class. But after getting married, she can transform Zhang Yi according to her ideas. Half an hour's drive, Zhu Yonk had already conceived the future life in her mind. Zhang Yi drove to the door of the shelter. Looking at the huge luxury villa in front of him, Zhu Yonk nodded, quite satisfied. The house is quite big. It must have taken a lot of effort to keep it intact in this kind of ice and snow. Zhu Yonk looked at the shelter with a scrutinizing eye and commented, "But I still think it's not as good as Blizzard City. It's too deserted here." Zhang Yi glanced at her. "I didn't ask you to live here." Zhu Yonk's face sank. "I'm just commenting on your house. Is there any need to be sarcastic?" Zhang Yi ignored her and went to open the door of the shelter. After the iris scan, the huge alloy door slowly opened. Zhang Yi and Zhu Yonk walked into the shelter. After seeing the luxurious and warm decoration inside, Zhu Yonk's eyes finally showed a different light. She thought that the place outside Blizzard City was desolate and decadent. Even if there were traces of human activities, they must have lived very poorly. But everything in the shelter shocked her completely. Warm and gorgeous, she could see that all the decorations were of the highest standard. Even the carpet under her feet was a hand-woven product imported from Rome. A small piece of a few square meters cost tens of thousands of Colombian coins. Converted into Chinese currency, that's 200,000. Not only the carpets, but also the sofas, ceilings, cabinets, chairs are all the most luxurious brands. After the apocalypse, not to mention the small villa in Blizzard City, even Zhu Zheng had never enjoyed such a luxurious life. "Where did you get these things from?" Zhu Yonk suppressed the shock in her heart and asked calmly. "The heavy snow closed the city. Even Blizzard City can only transfer the necessary living supplies. No one can enjoy it. But how can you have so many luxury goods here?" Zhang Yi answered casually. "It's the end of the world. These things are thrown everywhere in the mall, picked up everywhere. In the shelter, a large part of the household items now are obtained by Zhang Yi." He said it lightly, but for Zhu Yonk, this is extremely difficult to do. After all, not everyone is like Zhang Yi, who has the ability to dig out supplies from the snow layer dozens of meters deep underground and then transport them back from a long distance. "Huh? There are guests at home." Just when Zhu Yonk was shocked, A pleasant voice suddenly came to her ears. She turned her head and looked, and her eyes were a little unable to move away. Standing in front of her was a tall and beautiful woman in a blue dress. Her makeup was very delicate. Her fair and tender face was as delicate as a baby's, and her elegant figure was perfectly highlighted by the tight dress. That was a true golden ratio figure which was exercised just right and did not appear too thin. When she saw her, Zhu Yonk could not help but touch her arm. She suddenly felt uncomfortable all over. Obviously, she was also a beautiful and elegant woman, but when she compared herself with the one in front of her, Zhu Yonk felt ashamed from the bottom of her heart. Zhou Kuo had a gentle smile on her face and looked at Zhu Yonk. But after seeing her, she felt relieved. This video ends here, but another ERA of great story starts here. Long journey on ship, different battles, unknown civilization. Much enjoyment awaited. Kindly subscribe it if not already. Thanks.